Most people remember The Last Starfighter as that charming 80s movie about a kid who gets recruited to fight in a space war. What they don't know is that the director was Michael Myers. The U.S. military was using the same supercomputer to simulate nuclear war. And the movie promised kids a video game that never existed, creating one of the most infamous lies in film history.
And we saw that and hated it.
Hated? Today we're exposing 15 hidden truths behind The Last Starfighter, including why the Oscars called computer graphics cheating and how one improvised laugh became the creepiest moment in the film. Let's get into it. 1. The director is Michael Myers. The man who directed The Last Starfighter wasn't some Hollywood veteran. His name was Nick Castle. And before he ever sat in the director's chair, he was famous for something completely different. He was the guy under the mask in Halloween. That's right, the same person who silently stalked Jamie Lee Curtis through Haddonfield in 1978 went on to direct this heartwarming Disney-style space opera about teenagers and alien recruiters. It's one of the strangest career pivots in film history, from embodying pure evil to crafting a film about hope, heroism, and believing in yourself. The contrast couldn't be more jarring, and most audiences had no idea they were watching a movie made by the Shape himself. Michael Myers made a kids' movie. Let that sink in. 2. Will Wheaton was cut before. Will Wheaton became Wesley Crusher on Star Trek, The Next Generation, or played Gordy in Stand By Me. He had a small role in The Last Starfighter. He shot his scenes as one of Louis' friends at the trailer park. He collected his paycheck. He went home thinking he'd made his big screen debut. When the film was released in July 1984, Wheaton was nowhere to be found. His scenes were completely cut from the final edit, left on the cutting room floor for reasons that were never publicly explained. He's still listed in some databases and early credits, a ghost in the machine. It was a brutal introduction to Hollywood for a kid who would later become a geek culture icon. Even future Star Trek actors aren't immune to the editor's scissors. 3. The most powerful computer. On Earth, The Last Starfighter didn't use industrial light and magic or any traditional effects house. Instead, the producers hired a company called Digital Productions, and they had access to something no one else in Hollywood could touch, a Cray XMP supercomputer. At the time, this machine was the most powerful computer in the world, a beast that cost millions of dollars and was normally reserved for the most classified government work. The U.S. military used Cray supercomputers to simulate nuclear explosions and model the effects of atomic war. Hollywood used the same machine to render a spaceship called the Gunstar. It was an absurd collision of Cold War technology and Saturday matinee entertainment. The computer that could simulate the end of the world was making a movie for kids. 4. The cheating Oscar snub. The Last Starfighter revolutionized visual effects. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences refused to nominate it for Best Visual Effects. The reason was painfully simple. The industry believed that using computers was cheating. This was the same idiotic logic that kept Tron out of the Oscars 2 years earlier. The prevailing attitude among old guard effects artists was that pressing a button on a computer was somehow less legitimate than building physical models by hand, as if the hundreds of hours of programming, rendering, and troubleshooting didn't count as real work. It was a generational divide, a refusal to accept that the future had arrived. The snub didn't just insult the filmmakers, it revealed how terrified Hollywood was of the technology that would eventually replace them. 5. The render times were brutal. Even with the most powerful computer on Earth, progress was agonizingly slow. The graphics had a resolution of roughly 3,000 lines, an absurdly high level of detail for 1984. But achieving that quality came at a brutal cost in time. It took the Cray XMP supercomputer between 2 and 3 minutes to render a single frame of footage. That means every second of finished film required roughly 2 to 3 hours of rendering time. For a movie with 27 minutes of CGI, the total render time was astronomical, and every mistake, every tweak, every adjustment meant starting the whole process over again. Modern VFX artists complain about render times. They have no idea. 6. No models were used. This was unprecedented. The Last Starfighter became one of the first films to feature zero physical models for its spaceships. Every vessel you see in space, the Gunstar, the enemy fighters, the massive capital ships, was pure mathematics and code. No miniatures hanging from wires, no painted foam, no carefully lit models shot against a blue screen. It was all ones and zeros, rendered pixel by pixel inside a machine that most people didn't even know existed. For comparison, Star Wars and Star Trek were still using models in 1984. They would continue doing so for another decade. The Last Starfighter leapfrogged the entire industry and proved that the future of science fiction filmmaking wasn't in a workshop, it was in a server room. 7. Robert Preston's last role. The actor who played Centauri, the fast-talking alien recruiter with the slicked-back hair and the infectious grin, was Robert Preston. The Last Starfighter was his final film role before his death in 1987. Preston was a Broadway legend, best known for playing Harold Hill in The Music Man. And Centauri was essentially Harold Hill in space, a charming con man with a heart of gold who talks a small-town kid into believing in something bigger than himself. He brought the same manic energy, the same musical patter, the same twinkle in his eye that made him a star in the 1960s. It was a perfect swan song, a reminder that even at the end of his career, Robert Preston could sell you anything, even a war in the stars. 8. Lance Guest played the clone. Lance Guest didn't just play Alex Rogan, the teenage hero. He also played the Beta Unit, the android clone left on Earth to impersonate Alex while the real one fights in space. Playing both roles meant Guest had to act opposite himself in several scenes. It also meant enduring hours in the makeup chair to create the Beta's unsettling plastic appearance. The goal was to make the Beta look almost human, but not quite. Just artificial enough to creep out the audience and Alex's girlfriend Maggie. It was an early experiment in creating an uncanny valley effect. Guest had to modulate his performance to make the Beta feel robotic without tipping into parody. It's a testament to his skill that the Beta still feels genuinely eerie 40 years later, and one improvised moment made it even creepier. We'll get to that. 9. The alien eyes made him blind. Dan O'Herlihy, the veteran Irish actor who played Grigg the reptilian navigator, had to wear massive contact lenses that covered his entire eyes. These weren't normal costume contacts. They were huge, opaque, custom-made pieces that turned his eyes into solid black orbs. The problem? O'Herlihy couldn't see anything while wearing them. He was effectively blind on set. Assistants had to guide him around between takes. During filming, he relied entirely on his other senses and his memory of the blocking to hit his marks and interact with the other actors. It was an agonizing process. O'Herlihy never complained. He treated it as part of the job. His performance as the loyal, enthusiastic Grigg remains one of the most beloved alien characters of the 1980s, and he couldn't see a thing while creating it. 10. The false advertising scandal. This one still makes people angry. The end credits of The Last Starfighter contain one of the most infamous lies in movie history. In bold letters, they promise, "Play the Starfighter game by Atari at an arcade near you." Kids across America went searching for the game. They were convinced they could live out Alex Rogan's adventure for a handful of quarters. The game was never released. Atari built working prototypes, but the arcade market crashed in 1984. The machines were too expensive to manufacture. The company scrapped the project. Thousands of disappointed children wandered arcades looking for a game that didn't exist. It was a cruel bait-and-switch that became a minor scandal in gaming circles. To this day, the prototype cabinets are considered holy grails for collectors. The promise was a lie. The heartbreak was real. 11. The simulator was real. Here's the twist on that arcade story. The cabinet you see in the movie wasn't a fake prop with pre-recorded video footage playing on a loop. Atari actually programmed a real, playable version of the Starfighter game specifically for the film production. The reason was simple. They wanted Lance Guest's reactions to look authentic. If he was actually playing a game, responding to real inputs and real outcomes, His performance would feel more natural, so Atari built a custom game just for the movie. Guests spent hours in front of the machine, learning the mechanics and perfecting his high-score run. It's one of the most elaborate props ever created for a film. Most audiences never realized they were watching a real game in action. The game existed, it just never left the set. 12. The Star Car designer was a legend. The futuristic flying car that Centauri drives gets mistaken for a modified DeLorean all the time. It wasn't. It was a completely custom build by Gene Winfield, one of the most legendary car customizers in Hollywood history. Winfield was the man who built the shuttlecraft for the original Star Trek series. He created the iconic vehicles for Blade Runner. He brought that same level of craftsmanship to the Star Car. It was a one-of-a-kind creation, designed to look both alien and aerodynamic. Sleek lines. A cockpit that seemed like it belonged in a spaceship, not on a highway. The Star Car only appears in a few scenes, but it's become one of the most recognizable vehicles in science fiction cinema, right up there with the Spinner and the DeLorean it's so often confused with. 13. The Death Blossom crashed. The computer. The climactic Death Blossom sequence, where the Gunstar spins wildly and fires in every direction at once, destroying the entire enemy fleet, was so mathematically complex that it allegedly crashed the Cray XMP multiple times during rendering. The sequence required the computer to track dozens of ships, hundreds of projectiles, and constant rotational motion, all while maintaining perfect geometric accuracy. It pushed the machine to its absolute limits. According to the effects team, the Cray would occasionally just give up and shut down, forcing them to reboot and start over. Even the most powerful computer in the world couldn't handle the chaos of the Death Blossom without breaking. The final result was worth it. It's still one of the most visually stunning moments in 1980s sci-fi. 14. The beta laugh was improvised. Remember when I said we'd get back to the beta? One of the creepiest moments in The Last Starfighter is when the beta unit tries to laugh like a human and fails spectacularly. It produces this weird, mechanical, off-rhythm chuckle that makes everyone uncomfortable. That wasn't in the script. Lance Guest improvised the laugh on set. He decided the beta would try to mimic human behavior, but wouldn't quite understand the timing or emotional context of laughter. It's a small moment, but it's brilliant character work. It shows that the beta is learning, but it's not quite there yet. The laugh became one of the most memorable parts of Guest's dual performance. It's the moment you realize the beta isn't just a copy, it's something else entirely. 15. The sequel that won't die. For decades, fans have been begging for a sequel to The Last Starfighter. For a while, it looked like it might actually happen. Screenwriter Gary Whitta, who wrote Rogue One, a Star Wars story, became obsessed with the project. He released a proof-of-concept reel titled The Last Starfighters to show studios what a modern sequel could look like. The reel was gorgeous. The story was solid. The fan response was overwhelmingly positive. But legal rights issues have kept the project stuck in development hell for years. The original producers, the studios, and the estates of various creatives all have competing claims to the franchise. No one can agree on how to move forward. It's one of the most frustrating cases of a sequel that everyone wants but no one can make. Unless someone untangles the legal mess, The Last Starfighter 2 is going to stay a dream. The Last Starfighter wasn't just a movie, it was a promise of what the future could look like, both on-screen and in technology. A supercomputer that simulated nuclear war made a kids' movie. The Oscars called it cheating. The arcade game was a lie, and the director was Michael Myers. Somehow, all of that became one of the most beloved sci-fi films of the 1980s. Which behind-the-scenes fact shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most underrated sci-fi films ever made, hit subscribe for more stories about the movies that changed everything. See you in the next one.